In this video, we're going to learn how to use the float dunder method in Python. So the dunder methods are also known as magic methods, and the float dunder method is a method that we can add to our class definitions in order to define how objects of that class type should be converted to a float value. So for example, if we have a class data, and inside the class data we have an init method, and the init method has a value parameter, which is going to be a floating point number, and we set an attribute value equal to that parameter value, then down here we could create a data object with data is equal to data, and we'll have 4.5. Now, if we try to use the built-in float function to convert this data object to a floating point number, it's not going to work. So we could have here data underscore float is equal to, and we'll call float and we'll pass it data. If we save the program and we try this out, we'll get an error. It says float argument must be a string or a number, not data. So what we could do is define a float dunder method for our data class. Then it's that method that's going to be called when the built-in float function is used with a data object. And that method should define how a data object is converted to a floating point value. So we could have here def and then double underscore float with self. And what we'll do is just return the value attribute. So we'll have return self.value. Then if we save the program and try it out, now there's no error. And if we output the type of value that data float references, and if we output data float and save the program, now we'll get that data float is referencing a float type object and that it's set to 4.5, which is correct. Now exactly how we define the float dunder method is really up to us as the authors of the function and the problem that we're trying to solve with our class definition. Now I should mention there should be some reason why we want our objects to be convertible to float values. So in the case of strings, sometimes we'll have, let's say, a string with 4.5 inside of it. It makes sense that we might want to convert that string to a floating point number using the float function. We should have some similar good reason for this, because otherwise here we could have just had data and then dot value to extract that floating point number from the data object. So we should have a good reason to use this dunder method. So this is how we can use the float dunder method in Python. Check out portfoliocourses.com, where we'll help you build a portfolio that will impress employers.